I'm sure you've heard me talk about 26shirts.com before, but just in case you haven't, let me fill you in. At 26 Shirts, they sell different limited edition sports-themed t-shirts every 2 weeks. After a shirt's prospective 2-week run is over, the design is retired and never sold again. They are operating out of Buffalo and now also offer options in Chicago. For every shirt sold, $8 is donated to a family in need. Not to a major charity or foundation, but to an actual family or individual in need. To show our support here at Chasing Cinema, when you buy a shirt, we will automatically put you into a drawing to win the next shirt free. That's right. You buy a shirt, $8 goes to help a family or individual in need, and you get a shot to win the next shirt absolutely free from Chasing Cinema. So go to www.26shirts.com and buy a unique Buffalo Sports Design t-shirt, help a great cause, and also get entered to win the next shirt absolutely free. Again, that's 26shirts.com, because you have the ability to help a complete stranger just because it's the right thing to do. www.26shirts.com. Help someone now. And thank you so much for tuning in to ChasingCinema.com's official YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Tiranno. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on iTunes so each week our episodes are automatically downloaded to your iPad, your iPod, your iPhone, whatever you're listening to podcasts on through iTunes. Each week you won't have to touch anything, but every Sunday you'll get our episode. You'll be able to listen to what me and my guests and, of course, Louie are going to be talking about that week. A great episode coming up next week. Make sure to tune in. I will be out of town, but me and Josh Bell have recorded our top 5 favorite films of the year so far, so please make sure to tune into that. But today we are going to be talking about Ant-Man and Trainwreck, amongst other things, and luckily and rarely, I am joined by my little faithful co-host / best friend,
Louie Coruzzolo.
Good, sir. How are you?
I am doing well. How about you?
I'm doing well. Been sick, so if I kind of sound nasally or my voice goes in and out, I've been a little bit under the weather. The allergies aren't treating me very kind. But other than that, it's good when I'm sick because I get to just kind of lay in bed and watch movies. So I was able to watch a couple things, and I know you've watched a couple things, so hopefully we'll have an interesting conversation of catch-up. I'm going to let you go first. What have you been watching? What have you been doing? What do you want to talk about?
There's a couple of things I actually want to talk about. So I missed out on some movies, but there's this one movie that just came to Amazon Prime recently. It's a movie that I think had a limited release in the theater run, but didn't have it too long. But now it's on Amazon Prime, and it's Slow West. It's directed by John McLean. It's starring Michael Fassbender. It's about pretty much started back into the 1800s, probably a little post-Civil War era, and it's about this young Scottish man who's traveling from Scotland to America, trying to find the love of his life, who recently moved out to the Great West. And along this dangerous journey, he finds and kind of, I don't want to say befriends, but he kind of makes acquaintances with a veteran cowboy, Michael Fassbender, who plays this cowboy, Selleck, and they make an unliking pairing. There's kind of a twist, not too big of a twist, but I'm going to cut off there just in case you do consider it a major twist, because it does takes you to places you probably don't expect it's going to take you to. But that's generally the gist. There's a lot of new, up-and-coming new name. The kid is played by Cody Smith-McPhee. And I looked on his IMDb.
Playing Nightcrawler.
Yeah. So that's he was in the road, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It says Paranorman, but like this is like I guess one of the first major performances of him, and he's going toe to toe with Michael Fassbender. The movie is aptly named Slow West. It is a slow pacing Western. It's not your typical, spaghetti Western where there's this, a gunfight every 2 seconds. But when they do get to the point in the movie where, bodies are, laying on the ground covered in blood, it gets very intense, very well directed and it becomes fascinating to watch. I absolutely enjoy this film. It wasn't perfect. I think it was a very short film. It was only 84 minutes. But at times, I think they could have added more to the story to make it more concrete and fluid. There were some plot holes here and there that you question as a viewer, like, oh come on, I kind of don't believe that. But other than that, it's very fascinating. It's a different approach to a western, and Michael Fassbender is amazing as always. And it's a little good independent western thriller that does its job. I definitely recommend this, especially if you're a big Michael Fassbender fan. Definitely go check it out. It's on Amazon Prime now. It's not on Netflix, I don't think, but maybe in the near future it will be.
Yeah, definitely. I will have to go check it out on Amazon Prime.
I think you would like it. I don't want to say art house because it's definitely not art house, but the cinematography is beautiful. The landscape they do, because it's all outdoors. Like pretty much every scene is out of the wilderness, besides two scenes, and those two scenes take place in this a little house, if you will. But it's fascinating. Great performances. It does get intense. It holds your attention, and I think it's well made. I give them credit, and it's sad that I guess they didn't have too good of a run in the theaters, but because we're living in this new age of video on demand, I'm happy it's on Amazon Prime, and hopefully it gets some viewership that way.
I will have to check this out. I've not seen it, but like you, I'm a really big Michael Fassbender fan. I'm pretty sure we've been talking about it for a very long time. I watched something completely opposite of that. I watched, while I was sick, I had this very strange craving to watch Ratatouille, which is a great Pixar film. It's actually one of my favorite Pixar films ever. And rewatching that was really nice because it was a movie that I thought I remembered very, very well, but there was a lot of things happening I didn't remember. And it's really, really great. And I realized how much I am like Anton Ego, the critic in the movie. I was like, this is me portrayed on screen. He has this really, really great line in the movie where he's talking to this young chef who no one knows is being controlled by a rat to cook. And in this type of press meeting, he goes to the famous critic Anton Ego, who seems to be very daunting and actually kind of comes off as one of the antagonists, but isn't. He goes, you're too skinny to like food. And Anton gets so angry and says, I don't like food. I love food. If I don't love it, I don't swallow. And I think that is just one of the greatest lines ever. And I love that line. He's really, really great. And the review at the end, because the movie reviews with Anton doing a voiceover with his review of this restaurant and being cooked ratatouille by a rat, really, really powerful. It's really, really good. It's a movie that I think a lot of people consider one of more of the fluffy Pixar movies, but it's really not. It's a very, very great movie. Patton Oswalt does a really good job as Remy, the main character. And, just because everyone would be talking about Inside Out, and I get the question, what's my favorite Pixar movie? Is it my favorite Pixar movie? I've been kind of interested in going back and watching these films, and I've been trying to figure out which one is my favorite. And I would say Ratatouille is easily top 3 along Inside Out. It's tough because going back and watching them, you kind of fall in love with them all over again. But, the Toy Stories have a really good place in your heart. Finding Nemo is really great. But definitely Ratatouille's up at the top. I really, really enjoyed that movie. It was very funny, very wonderful. And now that I think that being such a while since I've watched it, and now that I actually really, really like to cook, that movie's very real. That movie is very on it. I mean, besides the fact that there's a rat talking and cooking, but like everything in the kitchen, the language used, the way that things are approached, and the sous chef, and they're all explained, and it's all very accurate. And those scenes are am I boring you? Because you just let out the biggest sigh in the world.
I did. It was unintentional.
No, but it was a really great movie. I loved it. You've seen this before, right?
Yeah. And it was funny. It was on ABC Family about a month ago, and I caught the last 30 minutes, 45 minutes of it again. And like you, I'm like, you know what? I enjoy this movie so much.
Yeah, it's really good.
It still holds up. And like you say, like this the ending with the critic and like the how the chef sticks up for the rat.
Yeah.
And he could do it, and they cook, and we're gonna make ratatouille, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, "What? No!"
And
it's just like the perfect dish
it
for
works
the
because,
critic.
The sous chef goes, that's a peasant dish.
Yeah.
Because it's a very cheaply made dish. And like as soon as he tastes it, the critic, he's like, it goes through his eyes and automatically transfers back when he was a young boy with his mother. Like, they really do a really great job at illustrating taste. There's even a scene in the beginning of the movie when Remy, the main character, the rat, is talking about flavor. And he takes a bite of cheese, and they kind of black out the background and start making like just little illustrations, little doodles to kind of help describe the flavor. And then he takes a bite of the strawberry, and it's the complete opposite. Cheese is, the texture and everything's a little bit different. And then he blends them, and it has this really nice, harmonious little drawing. And it's really cool. There's little things like that might be unnoticed by just your average moviegoers. A really, really great way to kind of illustrate texture and feeling. And I've never really seen taste described that way or shown that way, which is kind of nice. It literally almost visualizes tasting. Yeah,
and they did a great job. And back to the ending, when he's plating the ratatouille, it looked so amazing.
It does. It really does.
And to say that, knowing it's it's animated, it's just crazy to think. The
food looks delicious in that movie.
Yeah, I would eat that plate any day.
Yeah, it is a really, really good movie. If you haven't seen that in a while, I definitely recommend that check out, because I was so surprised how much fun I had watching the movie. I couldn't really talk, and I was coughing a lot, but I was laughing and coughing a storm up because I was enjoying that movie. Very cool. Louie, have you been watching anything else?
Yes, I actually have, and I fully caught up with the new HBO programming, True Detective, and even Rock's new show, Ballers.
Okay.
So I'm just going to dive into that briefly. I know definitely you haven't watched True Detective yet, because I've been begging you to watch season 1 like a year ago, and you still haven't. So I know you haven't watched season 2.
But I wouldn't need to watch season 2. No, right?
No, okay. No. And Ballers, I don't believe you've seen it yet, or have you?
No.
Okay. So let me just start with Ballers, because it's quick and simple and to the point. Ballers, starring The Rock, created by Steven Levinson. He's done, he's produced Entourage too, which makes sense because Ballers is like Entourage's brother, if not like identical twin. But this time, instead of taking the bromance that was in Entourage in Hollywood, they've taken it to Miami and into the National Football League. It just follows The Rock, his character, which his name is Spencer, and he was a former football player who's got kind of injured, ended his career early, and now wants to help current football players finance their money so they can have money after retirement, or if, God forbid, they get injured, careers ended early, no money. Well, because of his company, they have money now, and it's good. It's enjoyable. They speak a lot of truths to the whole National Football League and the players, because especially now when there's always something wrong with one of the players getting in trouble in the club or with family or whatever, I think they hit the nail on the head with that, because the group of players they are documenting in the show, which is obviously fictional, but they're dealing with problems that you definitely would see on ESPN. So they got that right, but at times they just fall back to the Entourage problem where, they use their female characters just as objects and as sexual beings rather than the human being, and that's a big problem. And it goes for the guy joke and
is it like
nothing. Go ahead.
Is it like Entourage in the sense that we have a group of characters that are fictional, but we get a lot of realistic sports cameos?
Yeah, there's plenty of. It's only been 4 episodes, and last episode you had Victor Cruz, wide receiver from the Giants, and first couple you do have spots here and there. I think a couple Green Bay Packer players showed up here and there, but they're not big cameos. They're just like in the background or at a party or meeting with the Rock's companies to sign a deal.
Any Buffalo Bills stuff?
Well, actually, apparently, The Rock played for the Dolphins. Spencer played for the Dolphins, and one of like the reasons why he quit, I guess they haven't revealed yet, is he keeps having nightmares of this big collision he had that like severely injured a player, and that player played for the Buffalo Bills. So there's that, but like I have a problem with that because like they keep showing this flashback scene of him hitting the player, but it doesn't look too good. It doesn't look too realistic because like we see big hits every Sunday.
Yes.
And like I guess nowadays we take it for granted, but the hit in balls doesn't seem that vicious compared to what we could see on a real game any given Sunday. So I'm kind of like, oh, they could do better than that. It's a fun. So I laugh, I chuckle. I think The Rock is doing a great job. It's another like achievement in his young filmography career. So I'm happy for him, and I would keep watching. I know the HBO just announced that it's picking up for a second season. So it must be doing good enough for viewership and critics. Check it out. If you love Entourage, you're probably going to like this. It's like not a spinoff, but it's definitely made in the same style, vein, same comedy, same, direction. And if you like NFL and that universe, definitely, give it a try. Kind of also reminds me of Playmakers. You remember that show on ESPN? ESPN dabbled with trying to make a fictional TV show.
No,
and it was about the NFL.
I don't ever watch ESPN. I
with
never, unless
it was called Playmakers.
Unless the World Series of Poker is on.
Yeah, it had Cuba Gooding Jr.'s brother as one of the main characters, and it kind of showed like the dark side to like the NFL life. The players are always cheating, always having one night stands, taking drugs, stuff like that. It didn't last long, but I see a connection between the two because it shows you the other side to the superstar, which it's interesting, no doubt. The other show, the main show right now going on HBO is True Detective season 2, and it's a whole new cast, whole new plot, still created and written by the man that brought you season 1, Nick Pizzolatto. He's doing a job. But this time around, we have different directors instead of having one director throughout the season. In the first season, and I know I'm going to butcher this name, so I apologize. Kerry Fukunaga did all of the 8 episodes, did an amazing job.
You nailed that name, by the way. It is Kerry Fukunaga.
And that's not bad. I practiced like 10 minutes before we went on. He did an amazing job. This time, he didn't do any of the episode. I think, who was the one from Fast and Furious? The director, not Jeremy Lin. That's a basketball player.
Oh, no,
the director.
It's Jay. Is it Jason? I'll look it up. You keep talking.
Well, he's doing a couple episodes and then moving on. This time we got Vince Vaughn, Colin Farrell, Rachel McAdams,
James Wan. I'm sorry,
James Wan.
Yeah, the director of all the horror movies. I can't space that.
Oh, is it another one?
Oh, you're talking about the other? Yeah, it is. It's Justin. Okay.
Not James. Justin Lin.
Yeah.
Directed 2 episodes, and then the rest of the episodes are going to be directed by different people. Like I said, the cast is Vince Vaughn, Colin Farrell, McAdams, Taylor Kitsch. I know I butchered that last name. But they're on it, and I started being in Louisiana, deep south, we're moving to California, and it's very pulpy this season. It's almost like a old school crime noir, kind of like Chinatown, where we're back in California. There's land deals, there's corruptions at every different level, and it's very good this season. It's not great. It's not like season 1. But nothing could be like season 1. Season 1 is so perfect; it cannot be touched. But this one is enjoyable so far. Like I said, if you like the New York type detective stories of downright mystery, who done it, it definitely fits that mold more this season. The acting is still pretty solid. I think Colin Farrell is doing an amazing job. He's adding so much to the show, and so is Rachel McAdams. They're playing the detectives this season, and they're phenomenal together. Vince Vaughn, who when the news got out that he was being cast in True Detective season 2, everyone was like, "Oh my god, I want to have this is going to go." And for the most part, he's doing a pretty solid job as the not the villain, but as the gangster, Frank Simone. He's doing a good job at times. I don't want to say it's him, but like him and the writing, they don't match up. Like they have him try to be so menacing and so like scary that like with his delivery and the dialogue, it just doesn't mesh. Like I don't want to blame Vince Vaughn. I don't want to blame the writing, but the pairing, it's
you just
not
don't
like,
believe it when it's
no. There's some scenes with him where he does a really good job. Then the other scenes where it's like, okay, yeah. Okay, let's keep it moving, guys. But it hasn't hurt the show too much, and it's not as fluid this season as the first season. But I think I attribute that to more of it being different directors per episode now.
Yeah.
You know, I think having one director through the 8 episodes, it had his mark, and this season they're trying to follow that. Because a lot of the same shots, same vibe, same themes, you know, same overview of the whole vast land, but it's not clicking, it's not messing at times, and that's hurting the product. The dialogue is not as good as the first season, but it's still interesting. We're only in through season 4. And not season 4, episode 4, excuse me. And episode 4 ended phenomenally, just like last season's episode 4. So I'm intrigued where it's going. One thing I have to give Nick credit here is that it's a show that you have to pay attention to. Season 1, season 2, both, you have to be very attentive to the show and pay attention, because if you just, watch it while you're doing something else and not fully paying attention, you're going to lose a lot of information and you're going to lose the story. So I give them credit, because it's like must watch TV where you have to focus, you have to pay attention, you have to put 2 and 2 together. You become one of the detectives. And, I think that's the fun aspect of the show, because, just like the season 1, you're right in the car with both detectives trying to make sense of everything.
Interesting. It is a show I do plan on watching. Even though I got to watch the first one, I'm going to try to watch season 1 first, because. But I have heard that this show's already had some pretty crazy endings. I remember that someone's like, "Oh my god!" I was reading it on Twitter, like, "Can you believe the ending of this?" I think it was episode 2.
Yeah, episode 2 had an ending, and it was crazy. But without giving so much away, it's an ending that there's something more than meets the eye, because you being an educated fan, you could say, okay, yeah, you could put 2 and 2 together, like, okay, a nice try, and I think I gave away a lot just by saying that, you know.
Well, I mean, there can only be so many things that would make people say it's so crazy you'll never get, And my mind automatically goes to something, and I won't say what, but it goes to something, and obviously with your kind of distinction makes me believe, more of a... I think I know what it is, but I won't get into it. Yeah,
like, one thing, and again, if a show we're going to do what they did in episode 2, I just wish some show... I know Game of Thrones, they do this a lot, apparently.
Yeah. And now I definitely know what it is.
Yeah, but that's definitely Game of Thrones. But I wish a show like True Detective or another show would be fully committed.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, do it.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I definitely gave away everything with that. But at the same time, it's crazy. You're sitting there watching like, oh my God, that's so, so random, so cool. But at the same time, you're thinking, man, come on. But I wish they would have committed to it, because granted, maybe the season would be far worse.
Yeah.
If they would have committed to it. But at the same time, I'm like, you know what? It's still worth a shot, because, what a way to do it.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, that's True Detective Season 2. It's available on HBO, HBO Go, HBO Now, and all that fun stuff. Show that I definitely need to get on myself on. I've been watching an HBO show, and it was called Curb Your Enthusiasm. I recently finished. Great show. I've talked about it for a couple of weeks now. Great show, but I was able to rewatch that fully. I've been kind of exploring Hulu just out of curiosity to kind of see if I really enjoy it or not. And I've not been using it as much as I would like to, but I'm trying to watch more and more from there. So hopefully I'll catch myself up on watching some pretty exciting shows. The only like real show that I watch that isn't on it right now, or there's two shows besides like all the reality cooking stuff that I watch, is Better Call Saul, which, do you know when that comes back? Because I don't know when it comes back. I don't even know if they have a date yet.
I don't think that they do have a date. I'm assuming February, like last time. Fresh
Off the Boat, which, if you guys remember, I've been talking about that show nonstop. So, and luckily we got our season 2, so I'm really excited for that. Yeah. Nonetheless,
and well, speaking about, sorry, because you just brought this up. Speaking of Better Call Saul, they just released the Emmy nominations. And Better Call Saul got like 7 nominations: Best Drama, Best Actor, Best Writing, Best Director, all the main categories. So that's good for them.
Good. Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure they were going to take some of those hosts because that is an amazing show. And one I'm really, anxious for it to come back. Feels like it's been gone for a long time already. But moving forward, before we get into our review of Trainwreck, the new film by Judd Apatow, and Ant-Man, the new film from Peyton Reed, me and Louie are going to quickly talk about 2 trailers, very briefly, that have caught our attention. And if you do follow us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/chasingcinema, or the news section on chasingcinema.com, you know that every single day I do video news updates about what's going on in the world of motion picture. However, past couple days I've not been uploading, which is very rare. I rarely ever do that. But unfortunately, I've been under the weather. This is the first day I've had my voice back, and I'm already running into the ground. And during this time period, I have not been able to make these videos. And 2 of the trailers are videos that are trailers are something I would have liked to talk about. So we're going to briefly talk about them right now. And I'm glad Louie's here to talk about them with me, because they are something that Louie will be emotionally invested in.
Yes.
The first one we're going to talk about is Joy, which stars Jennifer Lawrence, and a film from David O. Russell, which also stars Robert De Niro and many others. And I'm going to have Louie kind of break it down for us before we talk about that actual trailer.
Yeah, so this is a very interesting project by David O. Russell. I think the story was written by Annie Mumulo, who helped wrote Bridesmaids with Kristen Wiig. So right off the bat, you kind of say, okay, this is definitely going to be a little comedic. It follows a story about the lady, the very successful lady who invented the Miracle Mop. And just saying it just like that, kind of, you can have a good chuckle over, like, okay, we're going to watch a movie about how the Miracle Mop was made. Mm-hmm. But having David O. Russell rewrite the script and add his own twist to it, there's going to be much more about this film. And based on the first look at the trailer, it's definitely going to be more keen to like a Silver Linings Playbook type film than an American Hustle type film, because you have this family dynamic of this young lady, played by Jennifer Lawrence, Joy, and De Niro's playing her father, and her trying to make it in this male-dominated society. So
it is interesting because watch the trailer and it doesn't look like it's about a girl who's making the Miracle Mop.
Yes.
It looks like it's a very out there movie, like a very offbeat movie, like Louis said, kind of like Silver Linings Playbook, but even a little bit more left field. Mm-hmm. And we were talking about David Russell before we got on this podcast, but obviously him and this kind of dream team of him and Bradley Cooper and working with Jennifer Lawrence have really, really worked the past couple of years. So I think everyone's going to be really looking forward to this movie. I think the most appealing thing about the trailer, though, is how offbeat it is and just how Jennifer Lawrence is. Jennifer Lawrence really captures your attention in this trailer. The most vivid thing about it is obviously the ending when she's just shooting off this shotgun, which is just the way her facial expression is, just the way she's reacting is all very entertaining. And just the cast and all. I mean, the cast alone. I mean, you're looking at these names. You got, Robert De Niro, you have Bradley Cooper, you have Jennifer Lawrence, and you just know that it's something that's probably going to be great. That's something that's going to hopefully be as good as the last couple movies that earned him plenty of Oscar nominations.
Yeah, and if you go back to like the dream team, as you alluded to, it seems like De Niro, Cooper, and Lawrence, all three of them have been in Silver Linings Playbook. Obviously, De Niro had a cameo in American Hustle, which starred Lawrence and Cooper, directed by O. Russell, and now this again. So they are all on the same page. Whatever O. Russell is trying to do, he has those muse ready to go. It's a great collaboration. They're working to the same goal, so it's going to be interesting. I love the song choice in the film. Doing Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want. It definitely catches my eye.
Yeah.
And the trailer, like you said, it's very offbeat. You still don't know what exactly you're going to get. You don't know if it's going to be straight right drama, comedy, but you kind of think it might be a little comedic just because it's, David O. Russell's sense of humor is always in his films. But within the trailer, at least for me, I'm invested in the character already. I'm curious to see her journey, her path. So I give that trailer much credit because, I want to see more. I want to see where this character is going to go. And I think having David O. Russell work on the screenplay, coming here, he invests a lot of time and emotion and heart into his characters. I sorry to cut you off. And I don't see him not doing this for this. It seemed perfect, prime for him to, let's dive into something good here.
And I'm still looking at the cast, and actually, Robert De Niro's adopted daughter is in the movie as well, which is kind of cool.
That is cool.
I didn't know that. Just looking at this cast here, but I totally agree with Louie. And personally, just seeing David O. Russell's transformation. Just type in David O. Russell and oh man, now I forget her name, Lily Tomlin, and watch those debacles and watch those arguments, and then kind of watch when he was claimed to be in movie jail, and then just see this emerge, redefined director kind of come back. It's really, really awesome to see what he's done. And I've been pleased with every single movie he's made since The Fighter. And I'm hoping that doesn't stop with this picture. But I doubt it will.
Agreed.
Moving on, the other movie we're going to be talking about is a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy. And from Academy Award-winning director, what is it? Alejandro Inarritu? I believe.
Yep.
And this is a movie that completely took me off guard. Louis sent me the trailer earlier, and I was just like, wait, what? And Louis was, he had to go tell me that he told me about this movie forever ago, and I don't really remember. But this movie looks like an extremely interesting period piece called The Revenant. Louis, you want to talk about this movie a little bit?
Yeah. Like any movie, it seems like this is another inspired by true events type of film. It's set in the 1800s, specifically 1820s, and it's talking about, or it's going to be about a frontiersman played by DiCaprio named Hugh Glass, and he's hunting with a group of his associates, and in this adventure to hunt, I guess, animals for fur, his business partner, played by Tom Hardy, which is going to be John Fitzgerald in the film, brutally is left for dead. I think, let me read the synopsis for quote by 20th Century. Hugh Glass, played by DiCaprio, is brutally attacked by a bear and left for dead by members of his own hunting team. Well, would you figure it out? DiCaprio does not die in the film, and he looks for revenge against his former associates who left him for dead in this winter, snowing, cold. It looks so cold in the trailer. I'm like, no.
I love it.
No, thank you.
I'd be in heaven.
No, I'd be leaving. So it's a revenge period piece, but that's definitely simplifying it, because with Alejandro Inarritu, it's going to be much more than just in simple terms.
This movie also has an amazing cast. Amongst Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio, we have Domhnall Gleeson. We have Will Poulter, who I'm becoming more and more a big fan of.
Yeah, I love him.
And, it's funny that we were talking about Fukunaga, and, who unfortunately left the project of the remake of It, which was supposed to helm Will Poulter as the Pennywise the Clown, which might not be happening, obviously, with New Line Cinema, but I'm not going to get into that right now.
Yeah.
But, you know, those four names alone are really, really strong. Domhnall Gleeson is someone that might not be a household name yet, but he's really, really strong. He was in Ex Machina, which I really, really enjoyed him in. He was in a romantic time travel film called About Time with Rachel McAdams, which I also really, really enjoyed. But the thing that captured me most about this movie, and Louie already kind of mentioned it in a joking matter, is the setting and the location, the beautiful just look of this winter wonderland, if you will, this complete ice freezing desolate area. And just, I could tell this movie's going to be one of those movies that are at least in the quieter scenes will be very quiet, and it's just, I could just get that feeling of the movie going to be a very focused and quiet type thriller, though the trailer does look like it has a decent amount of action, which I'm sure it will have. I think it's going to be a lot of Leonardo DiCaprio kind of just being on his own. Another thing just the use of sound in the trailer is really, really effective as well. Obviously, I think it's going to be a little bit different when we actually see the movie, but this movie is something that you just kind of watch and you go, okay, yeah, this movie will definitely be probably talked about at the Academy Awards. Not to mention it comes out in December 2015.
Along with Joy, too. That's a December film, if we didn't mention it.
Very, very strong trailer. Leonardo DiCaprio looks great. Tom Hardy looks great. Tom Hardy is somebody that I've been talking a lot about lately, just because I feel like he is definitely more and more of an up-and-comer. You know, kind of watching him come from Bronson and movies where he played more of an action star and evolving into a really, really great performer. I mean, most recently Mad Max, which he played an action star, didn't have much to say. Wasn't a spectacular performance. Dark Knight Rises, same type of deal. He was really good in Warrior, but now we're watching him more and more develop. He has a movie coming out, which I'm really looking forward to, called Legend, which talks about two twin brothers that pretty much ran London in the 1960s and 50s. He's going to be playing a dual part, similar to our Armie Hammer in The Social Network. So I think, he's obviously trying to develop himself. And then we have him in this picture, which I'm just like, okay, wow. He's really, really trying to challenge himself as an actor. And I believe him. Every time I watch him, he's very, very genuine, and I believe everything that he does and he says. So I have a lot of faith in him as well. So I'm interested to seeing these two interact and how their chemistry is going to be.
Absolutely. DiCaprio is, on top of his game, and Hardy's only getting better, it seems like. So that's a very interesting pairing right there. And the trailer is just so beautiful, which is not surprising because we are dealing with Inarritu and his cinematographer, Emmanuel Lubezki. They've always done amazing work. So it just catches you and throws you into the wilderness. And it doesn't give away too much, which I like. Stuff is about to go down sooner or later for DiCaprio's character, and it just throws you in there, and it looks like it's definitely going to be an experience. Right? I have to read you this. I think this is amazing because, Inarritu's last film, Birdman, everyone was talking about how, experimental that film was because it appeared like the film was only shot on one continuous tracking shot. So he's not doing it this time around, but he's doing another experimental method. Let me break this down. It's crazy. The Revenant is shot chronologically on an 80 days schedule that takes place over a total principal photography time period of 9 months. This unusual long production time is due to the cold weather conditions, the remoteness of the location, and director Alejandro Inarritu's and cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki's aesthetic plan to shoot only with natural light for maximum realism. Only a few shooting hours are available every day and have to be carefully planned in advance.
Wow, that's interesting. But it's definitely something I believe to come from Inarritu.
I know.
And his cinematographer.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I wonder if they shot, after doing Birdman, okay, so we're going to do this picture. Let's see what we can do to make it another, crazy experience for us.
How do we make this movie that much more difficult for us to shoot?
I know, 9 months only. It reminds me of a skit in 30 Rock. Jenna had to film a werewolf movie, in Alaska, or some not Alaska, even more foreign, like Antarctica, and it was during the time where like the sun was only available for like a minute. So every day they have to get ready and like they shoot like a second of film every day, and it's kind of like what they're doing now, where okay, we got 2 hours today, that's a wrap.
And go on.
Go ahead. You know how precise they have to be.
Yeah, it's very, very effective. And well, I'm glad it's in the hands of Emmanuel Lubezki, who obviously has been the Academy Award winner for the past 2 years with Gravity and Birdman. I'm wondering if he'll be taking home the third year in a row.
You never know, but man, I think you could place his name down as a nomination at the very least.
Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see in December. But me and Lou will be talking about that movie probably more down the line as more develop. But right now, we're going to get more in a jokey mood, and besides those two films, and talk about Ant-Man and Trainwreck. We're going to be beginning with Trainwreck, and as usual, Louis is going to play. We're going to play the Q&A game where Louis is going to ask me questions, and I'm going to talk about the two movies. First, we're going to be reviewing Trainwreck, which was written by Amy Schumer and directed by Judd Apatow.
You want to give a little synopsis first before we dive into the Q&A?
Actually, well, I'm going to take this back a little bit. I was first introduced to Trainwreck at the 2015 CinemaCon here in Las Vegas. I had the opportunity to speak with Amy Schumer. Such a sweet person. Very, very nice. Very down to earth. But she, at the Universal presentation, and if you aren't familiar with CinemaCon, I've talked about it a lot on here, but pretty much it's a movie theater convention. And studios will come out and they'll have, each major studio will have a presentation showing their slates for the next year and their up-and-coming things. This is where Fast and Furious 8 was announced. This is where the animated Spider-Man movie was announced, and little things like that. Obviously, Amy Schumer made an appearance because she won Breakthrough Performer of the Year at CinemaCon, and she was there to introduce the world to the trailer of Trainwreck, and this is before the trailer came out. And I'm familiar with Amy Schumer, but not to a degree of being a fan of hers. I've seen her here and there. I've not watched much of her work, but what I have seen I'd like, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan, so it was really awesome to kind of see her in person. And which to me was really cool about just watching the trailer of Trainwreck is that John Cena has such an interesting part in the movie, at least at the clip shown here in this room with all these people. It was just very, very funny. But I loved it because Amy Schumer went on to talk about how this movie is very, very influenced by her real life experiences, her dating life, has a lot to do with her brother, or her father and her sister. Her sister is someone who she works with. Her dad did have, a similar disease, if not, I believe the same disease he had in the movie, MS. And, she talked about how it does have an element of realism, though when you watch this trailer, you're like, oh my goodness, she looks like a train wreck, which is, of course, the title. So, to me, I was very interested in that. And because she wrote this movie to give to Judd Apatow. And she had no intention of actually starring in the picture, but Judd Apatow had said, no, you're the perfect one. I want you to do this movie. To give a little backstory, even further than that, Judd Apatow, though his name is pretty much on every comedy that we see, as a producer, has only directed 5 pictures, if you include this movie. 40-Year-Old Virgin, Knocked Up, Funny People, This Is 40, and Trainwreck. And, everyone really likes 40-Year-Old... what was the first one I said? 40-Year-Old Virgin, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone really enjoys the 40-Year-Old Virgin. Some people like Knocked Up. Not many people are crazy about Funny People. But I really loved This Is 40. And I was definitely in the minority in that. Not only by critics, but by fans as well. I think some people liked that movie, but I truly loved that movie. If you guys remember, I actually gave it a perfect score on our website. It ended up on my Chasing Cinema Awards sheet somewhere along the line because of how just honest and funny that movie I believed was, and I really, really enjoyed it myself. So going into this picture, I have the mentality that Judd Apatow's directing, who has definitely become someone that I really enjoyed to watch. Amy Schumer is an actress that I enjoy watching as well, but have not seen much of her, and it looks like a very interesting comedy. So that's kind of, I know Louis asked me to give some backstory on the movie. But anyway, this movie follows Amy, who is taught very young that monogamy does not exist. Monogamy is not possible. And she goes through her life partying until she blacks out, never apologizing when she probably should, sleeping with countless men, and all that must change when she happens to be faced with the right guy, played by Bill Hader.
Very nice. And we know the backstory. We know the plot now. I have seen a couple episodes of Amy Schumer's show, Inside Amy Schumer on Comedy Central, and she's a very talented, funny, young comedian out there. And I'm glad she has this opportunity to become like this megastar, it seems like. And it just feels like watching the trailers, seeing her sense of humor, it just feels like, okay, this was meant for Judd Apatow. And it's no surprise that, this is like the first film, like he didn't help write any of the script.
Yeah, no, it's all Schumer.
It's all Amy. And so it's very cool pairing, very interesting pairing. How is it, did the pairing work as well as we hoped it will? Is it a match made in heaven, like we all assume it will be, or?
It was a really, really great match. I think for me in particular, not because there are certain things about the movie that is very Apatow. It is a bit long, which Apatow is known for doing with his dramas. They're just so happen to always fall a little bit like, if you would have cut 20 minutes out, you'd be much more solid picture. But Apatow brings a real genuine heart to his movies. And I want to talk about the fact that Amy Schumer is known for being very raunchy, very dirty. And that is... And I don't want, when I say heart and genuine, and, I don't want you to feel like, oh, this is a light Amy Schumer movie. No, Amy Schumer still talks about a lot of pretty interesting stuff. She's very raunchy, nowhere near as obviously where she's been in her most dangerous aspects of stand-up, but still definitely a presence to make this movie not a traditional rom-com. But Judd Apatow, I believe, really helps implement the heart of this movie and really illustrates the family chemistry very well. But I mean, that also has to do with a lot with the performances, which also work really well. But I really enjoy their chemistry. Amy Schumer, though, had a lot invested in this project, so you could easily see that she had a lot of emotions going into here. But I believe Apatow really was able to translate the heart of this movie and translate a character who we shouldn't like, who we at points don't like, to being someone that we kind of, feel bad for and eventually begin to like. So I think they were a really, really great team, and I hope they would work together again. I'm not sure if that would happen. I just think about if this movie falls in the hands of a different director, just how much more of they would say raunch it up rather than hard it up, which I think makes this movie better than your average, dirty comedy. I could get a raunchy comedy from anywhere. It's a comedy that's not only funny but worth remembering that makes this movie strong.
And it's funny because you use the word dirty comedy, and usually when we think about those raunchy dirty comedy, it's usually a guy flick.
Yes,
it's male cast, male oriented. It's meant for male audiences. It's a guy night, bromance type stuff. But this time, the raunch is coming from a female, a lady, a woman,
yes,
which is so refreshing, so nice. I hate, one of the silliest arguments anyone can make is, ladies can't be funny. Women, they're not funny.
Which you've obviously never seen a modern movie if you think that, because we are in the golden age of female comedians, and I strongly believe that. I mean, we've had great female comedians for a very, very long time, but now there is a demand for them. They are looking for those female comedians. You could see it in movies like Hot Pursuit that put Sofia Vergara and Reese Witherspoon together, not because they have great chemistry, but because they want to, earn some dollars off of this huge women.
Make another Heat.
Yeah, exactly. Just a very woman-dominated comedy. And, Ghostbusters is a great example of just how strong that demand is.
So, with that being said, how, did they play with cliches at all? Because obviously Amy's playing a character that's meant for, a typical male.
Yes.
In previous films, he's a partier, one night stand after one night stand, doesn't want to settle down, the list could probably go on, and that's just from watching the trailer. Do they play with cliches at all?
Yeah, they do. They play with gender stereotypes a lot. And I think that's another reason why I enjoy this movie. Now, before I get into it, I don't want you guys to think that this movie is like, this is what's wrong with movies. We're changing it. We're going to make sure that, this isn't just how women and men are portrayed. It's not a movie that is trying to be truly thematic. I think that these messages are in there, but they're not martyring them as well. They're just fun ways to play with different things. And you're absolutely right. And that's actually a theme that goes throughout the movie, is that the gender roles are reversed. In the trailer, you could watch the SNL star Vanessa Bayer, who is amazing in this movie. Absolutely hilarious. If you don't appreciate her,
yeah, she's great.
As the 12-year-old Jacob on SNL, you'll love her in this movie regardless. There's a scene where Bill Hader calls Amy Schumer after they had sex for the first time, and Vanessa Bayer is automatically in the trailer. She's like, we'll hang up. I'm gonna call the police. He's a stalker. Yeah. And and then on the other side of the phone, which we don't see in the trailer, is LeBron James, being giddy about Bill, who is amazing, by the way. I'm sure you'll ask me about it, but LeBron is amazing in this movie. Who's getting giddy that she wants to go on another date with Bill Hader, and he's rooting him on. And there are little things like that, in situations like that just kind of just say, just kidding. The common gender roles you're used to is going to be a little bit different in this movie. And I respect it for that, and I respect it because it doesn't jam down your throat and say, we have a message that we're trying to deliver. Amy Schumer recently, amongst Jerry Seinfeld, kind of came out and addressed the attack of comedians as far as political correctness. And Amy Schumer had a beautiful response to that. You could read more about it, but she says, I'm a comedian. I don't take things seriously, so don't ask me to not joke. That's what I do. And it's there. She's joking. She has a little bit of a message, but it's all fun, and it's not meant to be a martyr of a movie. But it is situations like that kind of make us think about it. I think that in a movie that forces us to do that, we look at like, oh, God, we know what you're trying to say, but you're coming on way too strong. Where this movie plays that, it makes you go, oh, I see what you're doing there, and that's kind of clever.
Mm-hmm. They don't force it down your throat. And it's not something that's like a heavy, like I said, it's not a heavy theme where they're always addressing gender, but it's just those little scenes where you go, okay, this is kind of reversed. And it works that way. It really does. And being it is a romantic comedy and a raunchy comedy at that, I'm sure there are so many scenarios and situations that they came across where, they didn't even have to try hard to say, hey, look, it's, kind of funny how, we're on this side of the coin instead of the other.
Yeah, definitely. Go on.
No, you could go ahead.
No, yeah, there are a lot of opportunities that arise, and unfortunately, I can't think of any off the top of my head that are other examples of this. But they play it off very well, and everyone in this movie is brings great comedy to this movie. The two even some of the most heartbreaking characters in the movie are the funniest. So this movie, it works more as a comedy than a rom-com. Unfortunately, rom-coms have this kind of name where it's not necessarily an approved thing where, it's a rom-com, like it's that stereotypical, cliched movie. And this movie doesn't really follow those tropes, though towards the ending, it does fall in it, and you're like, damn, you almost went through it. You almost made the whole way through. But it still doesn't take away the enjoyability of it. And
since you mentioned him already, it's hard not to, mention King James himself, LeBron. How was he? How is his chemistry with Bill Hader? From the trailer, they look like they're having a great time. It's so believable, this odd pairing. How was that? How was Bill Hader? And I'm sure you're going to bring up how was WWE superstar John Cena.
There are two. Yeah, those are the two performances that I mentioned in my review, particularly. As great as the SNL cameos are, and pretty much everyone on the SNL cast finds their way in this movie. But both performances are really, really great. John Cena is interesting because he doesn't play John Cena like LeBron James plays LeBron James. John Cena plays one of the most awkward characters I've ever seen in my entire life. And if you are a woman listening to this podcast and you are a fan of John Cena, he does get butt naked in this movie. So that if my review doesn't flee to the theaters, that comment definitely should. But he is so awkward, and though it was so funny. I was watching it, Louie, and I was like, wow, this kind of reminds me of watching The Rock, because a movie that I didn't mention earlier that I watched was Walking Tall, that I watched recently. It was on DirecTV, and I was like, oh yeah, he's about to go in the casino and bash it up. And I was like, I have to watch this movie. But you watch The Rock then, and you're like, oh, he's kind of klutzy. He doesn't have a really great flow, and John Cena doesn't either, but he's really funny, and his character's supposed to be like that, so it kind of ends up working all in all. But he's also the character that makes us dislike Amy Schumer, because he's actually a really genuine guy who has the hopes of staying with Amy Schumer while she's sleeping behind his back. So when that's revealed, which isn't a spoiler or anything because it happens in the first 10 minutes of the movie, we automatically go, okay, I don't like you because we really like this genuine guy. John Cena plays a very awkward, weird version of John Cena, but the still stand-up guy. LeBron James, on the other hand, Josh Bell, if you listen to our podcast next week, wasn't crazy about LeBron James as much as I was. LeBron made me laugh a ton in this movie. And there are two really great scenes that I mentioned in my review that I really enjoyed from his performance. It answers a few questions for us. One, it asks us, just because LeBron James is rich, does he have to buy everyone's meal? And that was a really, really great scene. I won't go on much in that. And the second is that, Bill Hader and them really do have a nice chemistry. Bill Hader kind of plays a psychiatrist. He holds an intervention for Hader at one point in the movie. Very, very funny. It plays on the whole, like, oh, he likes Downtown Abbey. And it just kind of gives him a different style. But there's a really great scene where Bill Hader and him just want to kind of talk and have guy time, and they play basketball of all things. And it's this amazing little 20-second, 30-second moment of just watching how you would if LeBron James is your best friend, how playing recreational basketball with being him would play. And the fact that they do play is absolutely hilarious. He's really good, and he's very comfortable as well.
Yeah, you can see that from like the clips they posted. It just looks like LeBron's at peace. Like,
yeah,
he's not trying.
In this movie.
It just comes natural.
Yeah. Go on. And
it helps because LeBron has been on SNL, has worked with Bill Hader, and probably other members of the crew. Yeah. So that foundation made this a little bit easier for LeBron.
And I guess now that leads me to talk about Bill Hader, who is interesting in this movie because he's not the funny, goofy guy. He doesn't take that role on in this movie. Sure, he's funny and he cracks some jokes, but he plays more of the average guy in the sense that he's not particularly outrageous. He's not out there, he's not like his character in the Skeleton Twins. Is that what it's called, right? The Skeleton Twins?
Yeah.
He's not like the characters we've seen him on SNL. He's very much just plays a regular guy who happens to kind of sometimes have witty comments to make. And that's really interesting because that's a side of Bill Hader we don't normally see, but he's really, really effective in it. And, he's able to, in wrestling terms, if you will, he's able to put himself and Schumer over without being the guy who gets all the laughs. He still makes her look funny. He still finds himself to be funny without being over out there. And Schumer, who at times, is delivering lines because she's Amy Schumer and she's supposed to deliver those lines. Bill Hader doesn't do that, but he's able to he is able to work with her and work around those lines to make it very genuine.
Yeah, I love Bill Hader. I hope he has big success.
I love this movie. I definitely enjoyed it. It ended up being one of the funniest movies I've seen this year. Probably the funniest. I just can't think of any other comedies that came out earlier this year. But I had a great time in the movie. I definitely plan on going to see this movie again, which is rare. But I do want to take my girlfriend because I think she'll get a kick out of it as well. If you're an SNL fan, you should go just because Bill Hader and the rest of the guys that show up. The other ones, the few other cameos, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but there's some really great ones. Colin Quinn, who plays her father, is really, really good in this movie. He's very funny, playing more of the Mr. Warmth, Rick, what's his name, Louie?
Don Rickles?
Yeah, Don Rickles, thank you. That guy who just has to say the wrong thing, says the offensive thing. A lot of sport. There's a great scene in the very beginning where he's arguing he's in a home because he has MS. and he's arguing with this much older gentleman about Babe Ruth being the best baseball player of all time. Great scene. But I will say one thing before we move over to Ant-Man, because I know I'm taking up a lot of time, is that one of where the real heart lies in this movie is the relationship between Amy Schumer and Brie Larson. And Brie Larson, who is always really good and always great to watch, really, really gives us a level out of Schumer and more of the realistic approach to how her character kind of could be. She's the very down-to-earth one that we go, okay, I understand her. Amy Schumer, she's out of her mind. Really, really good and really, really great at being that kind of frustrated sister who has the sister with the issues and all the problems. But to quickly, not make this movie look like a perfect film, because there are issues. The movie does run a little bit long. There's a couple unnecessary scenes in the movie that are there for no real reason, that simply couldn't. For instance, the intervention scene, I know I mentioned it. It is later in the movie, but LeBron brings on Matthew Broderick, an NBA commentator. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, a really famous commentator. And the commentator just kind of commentates the intervention. It seems like they kind of work for the few jokes, but overall they're like, why was this in the movie? There's real no point. And it kind of makes this movie that could have been an hour and 40 minutes tight and strong 2 hours and just a little bit pushing it. But great movie, great fun. Go see it, Trainwreck.
That makes me very happy.
Yeah, you'll love this movie.
Yeah, I'm planning on seeing it this weekend. So, but that's not the only movie that was released this week. And granted, even though that seems like it's going to be a big movie, there's one even bigger than Trainwreck.
Yes.
And it comes in a small size. bad
Fun
joke.
Size.
Ant-Man. Now, I'm not a comic, even though you're DC, you rep DC, have always repped DC.
Batman, but yeah.
Okay, Batman, excuse me, but that's DC, so nonetheless. Yeah. You've always been more of the comic book, I don't want to say nerd, but more of the comic book fan than I have. You read comic books, all of this. Now...
and I'm not huge either. But if me and Louie were with you at lunch, you'd ask me that question over Louie, and you would ask Louie about sports.
Exactly. Now, before they announced Ant-Man was going to be made into a motion picture, I had no clue what Ant-Man was, who he was, if that was even a superhero. So for those viewers out there who are more on my side, who's Ant-Man, Jake?
So... And that's interesting because Ant-Man was announced back in 2006. This movie's been in development for nearly a decade. Sorry, I'm going to go off. I'm already going to get off topic. But Ant-Man is basically a character who has the ability, through a super suit, to shrink and grow, to change size, and though he is able to shrink, he could increase his strength. So he could be as small as an ant and punch you in the face and you'll go flying. And he also has the ability to communicate with ants. In the comics, he was originally played by, but he was originally Hank Pym, who is actually played by Michael Douglas in this movie. Now, Ant-Man has been taken over in the comic book world, but what I knew of Ant-Man was Hank Pym, and though Hank Pym is in the movie, he's not the one in the costume. So, but basically, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. He's this character who was introduced, I want to say, in the 60s. I actually have to kind of check on that. But... just kind of having this ability to shrink. 1962, he appeared in Tales to Astonish and was played by Hank Pym. And that's pretty much was his thing, was that he was allowed to change size. And it was fun. It was cool. I was not something I never read. I was familiar with the character. So, I mean, I can't really talk about much about my experience reading Ant-Man. Mm-hmm. But like you, and like many, you hear this character on paper, and it doesn't sound like it should have grand appeal at all. It actually sounds like one of the more boring movies that they could come out with as far as superhero goes. But that might not be the case.
Yeah, or like for a non-comic book fan, who are probably maybe a little ignorant in comic book topics, you think Ant-Man, really? Like, come up with something better than that. Come on, guys.
And you can read that in my review. I say, Ant-Man's not a household name and not someone that everyone knows. And I said, my faithful comic book fans, don't freak out. I know you know who he is, but like my mom knows who Captain America and Iron Man is, but she has no idea who Ant-Man is. Most people aren't going to know who that character is. And it's not surprising because he's not the most interesting. However, the reason why you want to go with Ant-Man, even though this decision was made a long time ago, you look at Marvel's successful movies, and one of, if not the most, depending on which way you're looking at it, is a movie about an offbeat set of characters that no one really knew in Guardians of the Galaxy. So it might work. I don't know. I'll let Louie ask the questions and go forward from there. Okay,
so being an origin story, I guess I guess you could call it an origin story. It's the first installment. You see how Paul Rudd's character is becoming Ant-Man,
yes.
Right? So I won't get into the whole big synopsis of it because I think you covered that with the first question. How was it, Jake? Does it live up to Marvel standards? Is it trying to be too funny like the other ones? How does it fit in with Phase 2? And where does it lead us for Phase 3?
Well, let me kind of go on here and go back to that backstory I was talking about when I was wrongly answering your question. So this movie was developed in 2006. And though I had no interest up until recently when it was being more talked about, there was one thing about this movie that made me want to see it. And that was Edgar Wright, who was writing the project and going to direct. And it wasn't until recently where Edgar Wright actually exited the project, though he is still credited as executive producer and still gets a final screenplay credit. It was said that after Edgar Wright and Joe, I forget the gentleman's name, the other writer that worked with him, that Adam McKay and Paul Rudd went out and did some additions to the script. So I don't think that much of it was changed, but I will say the Edgar Wright version of this movie is something that I would still hopefully one day see because I would love to see how he does a superhero movie. But nonetheless, Paul Rudd is an actor who, like I talked about this is 40 earlier, is someone that's just very genuine. He's just a very nice guy. And you see that and you say, well, you don't know but I had the opportunity to meet Paul Rudd. And let me tell you, literally the same person. He's just such a very genuine guy, super nice, super funny, very, very polite. One of my most favorable experiences while I was at CinemaCon was interacting with Paul Rudd. So this movie does have elements that interest me. Now, going into the theater, I'm expecting... Well, not what I'm expecting, but I'm thinking about the earlier movie that came out this year, Marvel's Avengers Age of Ultron, which came out earlier this year. A big Avengers movie, which made a ton of money, but didn't leave an impact on fans. I don't remember. Did you saw this movie?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, you saw it. Not a movie that really struck a lot of people. I mean, it's a good movie, and I reviewed it fairly well, but it's not a movie that you're going to really remember. It's not one that made me go, oh, I can't wait for the next movie. It was a movie that kind of really said, okay, guys, you need to fix something here because people are kind of not being seriously entertained. And though it was a good movie, it just didn't have the huge impact that most Marvel movies have. So I am expecting Ant-Man, which is the final film in Phase 2. Or is it the first movie of Phase 3? No, it's the final movie of Phase 2 to really kind of get me ready for Phase 3. And Ant-Man 100% delivers. Ant-Man is a great movie. It is one of the most fun experiences we'll have in theaters this year. It is, in my opinion, far better than Avengers Age of Ultron. It is different. It is witty. Now, if you watch Guardians of the Galaxy, that movie is a little bit more offbeat than this film. This movie does feel more of like a movie, a comedy that you would see in theaters if you take away the superhero elements to it. It is a little bit more general, but it still works. It feels like Guardians of the Galaxy and Ant-Man are the cousins to the Marvel universe, and they're really great cousins that you always want to hang out with. I think that's the best way to explain it. Paul Rudd is great in this movie. This movie falls on his shoulders, and he's able to deliver charm and charisma and comedy and very, very much heart to this movie as he plays this expert thief who's trying to reconnect to his daughter, and all of a sudden recruited by Michael Douglas and his daughter, played by Evangeline Lilly. If I butcher that name, I'm sorry. And who's just kind of forced into this role to basically make a heist movie, which to stop, a heist that will possibly save the world, from actor Corey Stoll, who will play a character named Yellow Jacket, or Darren Cross. But one thing I do have to talk about before I move on is Michael Pena. Michael Pena is a great actor, is an amazing actor, and this movie proves it because I've seen him in some of the most dramatic pictures ever, and he's really touched me. He's given great performances. And then I watch him in this, and he delivers the greatest laugh. I mean, literally had me in tears in this movie with his performance. T.I. and the other gentleman who is along with the comedic gang is good, but there's something about Michael Pena who literally will just a side splitting, if you will. You can watch some of the scenes in the trailer, just the way he acts, the way he talks, the way he goes about situations, absolutely hilarious. But this movie is fun. It's exciting. It feels, a little bit looser than your Marvel movies, and it is an origin story, but it doesn't feel like the generic origin story type movie, and it's definitely in the top of the Marvel movies in my opinion. I think it's better than a lot of Marvel movies, and it's one that I enjoyed. And I think he made Ant-Man one of my more favorite Marvel characters. Do you have any more questions, or you just want me to kind of?
Well, because when you said Adam McKay and Paul Rudd helped, finish up the script, added whatever. So they added the comedy. You would think, is the film?
Well, I think Edgar Wright definitely had a lot of addition to the comedy, but there's definitely just Paul Rudd comedy. If you've ever seen Paul Rudd in a movie, there's just his tone, his delivery that only Paul Rudd would be able to bring to the table. Yeah. I don't know who wrote for Michael Pena, but my God, were they just. Again, all in delivery as well, though, because that could have been portrayed by someone who's not nearly as entertaining.
So it was like the funniest Marvel film. Because how Marvel films attempts to be funny?
Yeah.
And stuff
But Marvel movies usually are funny. But this is really... I laughed very hard in this movie, but I remember I laughed pretty hard in Guardians of the Galaxy too. So I don't want to say it is the funniest, but it's definitely one of the funniest. It's definitely one that I would call a comedy. I would call this movie a comedic superhero movie rather than an action movie. I mean, there's action in it, but it's definitely really comedic based. And even in the action sequence, it's just kind of winking at you. The big showdown has these two these two ant-sized characters fighting on this, this roaring train, only to find out they're playing on, Thomas the Train set. And, and you wait for this in the trailer. We have this, I won't say who, but we have one of either a hero and a villain, crouching down as a train is rushing past them. And then we take the perspective of his daughter and just see this train just kind of fall off its little tracks. And it's just like, oh, that's so funny. Just the way they do it. Things like that really, really work in this movie. But it's not just the delivery in this movie that's funny as well. Some of the interactions are really great. During Ant-Man's training, he so happens, kind of a spoiler alert, not really, it's in the trailer, he ends up going to what he thought is an old warehouse, but ends up being the Avengers lair, and finds himself toe-to-toe with Falcon, played by Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson. And they have a great sequence together. He's this guy who earlier in the movie says, "Can't we just call the Avengers to do this? Why am I doing this?" And then lo and behold, he goes toe and toe with Anthony Mackie, and that scene is really funny and creative. And it feels like, okay, this isn't, I don't feel like I'm watching the Marvel Cinematic Universe that's connected. I mean, that's, so connected and has this purpose to do this. It's just like, oh, this is kind of the cousin that comes over eventually. And that's how it feels. And I think that's what's enjoyable about it, is that we're not in a movie that is like, okay, guys, this is happening so that in the next movie, this could happen. Because that's what the Avengers movies are kind of turning into. Like, everything is a setup. And, that's cool and all, kind of, But the movies really need to deliver a whole story in those 2 hours, and sometimes they don't do that because they're so worried about setting up another movie.
How's Michael Douglas?
Michael Douglas is good, and Evangeline Lilly is good too, but nowhere near as good as Paul Rudd or Michael Pena. Corey Stoll, unfortunately, was one of my few criticisms of this movie. I'm not sure if it was writing or his performance, but he plays this role more as a psycho in a horror movie, in a bad horror movie, than he does in a villain. And actually, James and I were reviewing this movie on Thursday, and he said, Marvel's has never really brought us a really great villain beyond Loki, DC is always giving, and I corrected him, of course. I said, well, Batman, you mean, because Batman's villains are the villains that are great to watch and fun to watch. And DC could literally create a movie about villains and people will watch, but Marvel has never really given us villains that are great, or really, really amazing. I enjoyed Ultron, but Loki obviously stole the show, and he's not even really a villain. He's an anti-hero type now. Mm-hmm. But to me, Corey Stoll is too much to just take. And, everyone's like, whoa, it's a comic movie. They're supposed to be over the top. But, I just couldn't buy some of his dialogue and the way that he would react to situations. But that was pretty much my only real criticism of the movie. Again, a really fun movie, a great time, and it's a really good week to go to the movies and watch both of them. I'd say it'd be a double feature for me.
That's always good to hear.
Yeah, so that's going to wrap it up tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking your time to listen to our podcast. You could read my review for Ant-Man by going to chasingcinema.com/Ant-Man, or read my review for Trainwreck at chasingcinema.com/Trainwreck, or you could go to youtube.com/chasingcinema and find all of our video reviews as well as our daily movie news. Guys, thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. Make sure to tune in next week as me and Josh Bell give you our top 5 favorite films of the year so far. Louie, as always, it's always great talking to you. They're glad to see you back. Always fun. I'm sure we're going to be talking very, very soon again. Ladies and gentlemen, My name is Jacob Tiranno. I'm joined by my loyal, faithful, close / best friend,
Louie Coruzzolo.
And please continue chasing cinema.